Welcome to the Tax Compliance course. My name's Kieran Doe. I'm a senior tutor at ACA Masters, a multiple ICAEW prize winner, and I look forward to getting you through your TC exam with top marks. In the TC exam, you'll be faced with 5 questions, and these will be broken down by tax. So each question will focus on a particular tax. So a question on income tax, separate question on corporation tax, question on CGT and IHT, usually subdivided into 2 parts, one on each, question on indirect taxes, so VAT and stamp duty, and then there's a final question on ethics. So I suggest doing the questions in this order. So starting with income tax, then corporation tax, then capital taxes, indirect taxes, and then finally ethics. So income tax is worth the most amount of marks, and that's why that's a good place to start. It's also, there's a lot of memorized knowledge that can be needed for parts of income tax and corporation tax, and less so here with ethics and the indirect taxes. Also, as you get towards the end of the exam and you're feeling more tired, ethics is probably easier to do than a big income tax question. So therefore, our course is structured in this way, and we begin with income tax, and you can see that we subdivide it down into smaller topics. So you can see we take income tax and break it down, class on employment, class on trading income, and then smaller parts on trading income like cash basis, partnerships, etc. Different schedules of income, so like property, pensions, international, etc. So you can see how we break it down into smaller topics and question types, and this helps make it much more manageable. It's a very big syllabus, the TC exam. There's a lot to cover, but breaking it down like this makes it a lot more manageable. And then for each class, I'll firstly begin by teaching you the key technical content in a nice simplified, easy to understand way. And then immediately after, I'll work through some recent exam questions so I can demonstrate the exam technique to use when answering questions. So if we take employment income, for example, I'll begin the class by explaining how employment income is taxed, how the amount is calculated, so amounts which are subject to income tax and amounts which are subject to national insurance, and explain how each of those amounts are calculated. And then immediately after, I'll work through some exam questions so I can demonstrate the exam technique to use. So I'll teach you how to read a requirement effectively, therefore how you can subdivide the separate parts of the questions, you know, which parts to read immediately and which parts you can leave. And I'll work through the question so I can explain how each piece of information will be used in your answer. And I'll explain the little things to look out for that the examiner often includes, perhaps sometimes to help us or perhaps to test us to make sure that we have fully understood that technical content. So I'll teach you the technical content and then I'll work through some recent exam questions in full, and we'll produce answers to the question so you can see exactly step by step what you should be doing in the exam in order to score top marks. So then after the class, after I've explained to you the key technical content and you've understood it, as well as understanding and seeing the exam technique you should be using, you can then go away and make sure that you've understood this key technical content. So memorize the key points that you need to, and make sure you've understood the principles that you need to. And then you can go and practice other questions. So the other past exam questions, in this case on employment income, and then you can just practice that exam technique that I've taught you. So you can just replicate exactly what I have taught you and demonstrated to you so that you can master this exam technique. And then we'll just move on to the next topic and so on and so on. So for like CGT, for example, when we come to CGT, we'll firstly have a class on the basics of CGT, how to calculate a chargeable gain, the annual exemption, etc., etc. Then I'll work through some questions, and then you can go away and practice similar questions to implement that exam technique that I've taught you. And then the next class will be focusing on the reliefs. So I'll go through all of the CGT reliefs, explain when they apply, how they apply, the mechanics of how they apply, and most importantly, how to identify in the exam questions which reliefs are applicable. And then, of course, I'll work through some recent exam questions to demonstrate how to do that. And then after the class, again, you can go away and practice the other questions so that you can practice implementing those exam techniques that I've taught you. And you can see by breaking it down into smaller parts like this, it makes TC much more manageable. As I said, it's a big syllabus TC, but we're going to break it down one topic at a time so that you can just master and conquer TC in small bite-sized chunks. So if you haven't already signed up for the course, then there's a free sample class available on the TC page of the ACA Masters website. So you can watch this class in full, so you can see how the class is structured and you can see me work through an exam standard question. So I very much look forward to helping you get through your TC exam with top marks.